everybody. I'm here with Amanda Radke. I am so excited to talk to her. We have been friends for many years, and she is a fifth-generation rancher. She is a writer for Beef Magazine. She is a blogger. She has published children's books. She is the creator of amandaradke.com, which has great information, links about beef, and also Western gifts, clothes. She's a wife, a mother of 3 little ranchers. I love this woman, and I've been watching her do podcasts and speak, and she does lots of talks all around the country, and I get to talk to her today. Hi, Amanda. Welcome.
Hi. You make me sound way cooler than I am, and I'm like fangirling to be on your YouTube channel today, so I'm super excited to be talking to you in real life. Real life as much as this can be real life.
This feels pretty real. I'm excited.
Right?
So here's the first time I remember meeting you.
Mm-hmm.
We were at Zeroing In on Health,
Mm-hmm.
and I was there with a bunch of carnivores, and let me think. I know I get in trouble every time. I actually made a list of some of the ones that I think we both know very well in common. Charles Washington, Dana Spencer, Dr. Lisa Wiedemann, Amber O'Hearn, BJ Leon, Cindy Elmquist, Joe and Charlene Anderson. We're all there, okay? So here I was. It was 2013. All right. And I had been carnivore since 2009. So, I'd been there a little bit. We were all friends. And in saunters into the Zeroing In on Health room, this hot little rancher, and we're all like, so you make beef? Tell us more about you and your beef. And next thing I knew, Charles is running races with Team Beef across his shirt, and we're all talking to you about all the fascinating ins and outs of the beef world. And I just never had anywhere for me to put videos until recently. This is a new thing for me, or else I would have made a video with you back in 2013 because I've always been interested in you. So now that I think back, why were you at Zeroing In on Health anyway?
At that time, my husband and I were facing infertility problems. And so I was looking for things to do naturally that I could help me get pregnant. And so I don't really talk about it a lot because it's just so personal. But what I realized when I stumbled upon your group was here's these people that love beef, eat it all day long. And I'd been sold the exact same lie that everyone else is, that the dietary guidelines were like the Mecca. And I had been following it religiously and was getting sicker and fatter and more depressed. And here I was, I stumbled upon you and Charles, and you basically said, hey, you raise beef, you have a freezer full of beef, go eat it and feel well. And I was like, oh, hey. And I did, and I felt amazing. And now I have 3 beautiful children, and the rest is history. So I give you guys a lot of credit for that, for kind of showing me, really kind of the path that was right in front of me anyway all this time. And also just for being such strong advocates, because in the beef community, we're facing so much negativity and propaganda about how cattle are destroying the planet and how beef will kill you. And here you guys are passionately talking and saying the exact opposite, that you've reclaimed your health because you're eating what I grow here on my ranch. And so it's amazing. And I wish more people in the agricultural community would really start rallying around what you guys are doing. So quick shout out, the United States Cattlemen's Association had Sean Baker come speak a couple years ago and talk to a group of ranchers and he was like, hey, I love beef. Thanks for what you're doing. And they're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. So we're seeing a little bit of the crossover. So this is like such a pleasure to talk to you and get to talk to your audience too, that already really loves beef, but might have some questions about how it's raised.
Yes. So I feel like this brings together 2 very obvious worlds.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with beef. You're obsessed with beef. It's the ranching community, the carnivore community. This is a match made in heaven.
I would agree.
Right? So even in the carnivore community, though, I'll tell you something that I hear all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, just today, I sent you a screenshot because here we go again, where people find out I'm eating beef almost exclusively. I do, just to throw this out there, I have fixed a lot of health problems through mostly beef. Mm-hmm. I do still eat some eggs. If someone is serving pork or something, it's not like I have a problem with that. I will eat fish and pork and chicken, but my daily, 99% of what I eat is just beef.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes the next question. But is it grass-fed? And I'm like, not normally. And then the next one, is it organic? Is it USDA? And I'm like, okay, it's just beef.
Right.
So I want to talk to you. Should I be concerned? What do these names even mean, Amanda?
Yeah. So I think, when people start dialing in on their nutrition, they really want to zero in on like all these different marketing claims because they think, well, beef is great, but if I can get XYZ as well, I'll feel even better. And so I get what people are going for. And I think there's all different kinds of ways to raise beef. But I think it's important for people to know, and you guys say this all the time, eat the beef that you love and that you can afford. And so that, like, give yourself permission. You want to roll through McDonald's drive-thru and eat beef, you can still feel good about it. And so, yeah, we can break down some of these labeling claims and yeah. So when you hear grain fed, people think like, that's like the bad kind or something. That's conventionally raised beef. That's how the majority of beef is raised. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that cattle are fed strictly corn from the day they're born till harvest. So I think to break it down, you first have to understand the beef production chain. And so there's many people that are involved. And so I would be on the cow calf, which means I have the mama cows. And right now we're calving in the spring, and we'll keep those calves until weaning time. So they'll be about 600 pounds at that stage. And once we sell those calves, they go to what's called a stocker or a backgrounder. And so that's a grass-fed segment as well. So they're on pasture as calves. They go to this stocker operation where they grow up a little bit more on grass, and then they enter that final feedlot stage, which is the finishing stage. So it's, maybe 4 or 5 months, and they're fed that grain, and that's kind of the majority of conventionally raised beef. The grass-fed beef. So people just picture it. It feels good. It's like, oh, you picture cattle on grass, on pasture, and it just sounds prettier, right? Yes. But okay, here in South Dakota, if I wanted to raise grass-fed beef, guess what? The grass is dead right now. And so to qualify for a grass-fed market, I can still call them grass-fed even if they're in a dry lot eating hay that I put up during the summer months. Or they could be eating silage, as long as it's kind of like a natural, it's not grain. And so I think there's kind of that misconception that maybe grass-fed lives a healthier, happier life or something like that. Yeah. Also, on the grass-fed, you hear like the omega-3s. So if you're concerned about omega-3s, the difference between grain-fed and grass-fed is like so minute. And I think I read that salmon has 35 times the amount of omega-3s as a grass-fed or grain-fed serving of beef. Okay. And so if you really wanted to like beef up your omega-3s, beef isn't the product to eat anyway. And so those little differences there don't really make up to a hill of beans for me.
That's crazy.
Yes.
I'm not kidding. People out there typically make it sound like grass-fed is just what you described. Beautiful hillsides covered. And then when I say I just eat grocery store meat, they treat it as though these cows are like formed in a test tube and then raised in a factory. Like, right. You're eating factory meat or something. Right. What does this mean? These cows are still outside like a normal cow?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Well, then your mind will really be blown because organic or natural, people get the feeling that it's doing all of these things, that it's only grass-fed and it's, only pasture-raised. But organic and natural can eat grains. They can, that has more to do with the antibiotics side and the growth promotant side. And so there's that. But the, label of organic kind of gives it this like health halo. So I always tell people, if you want to shop by your ethics or you feel like you feel better about one production method or another, you can certainly pay more money to get that because there are ranchers doing those things, but you don't have to feel guilty about eating the beef that's affordable because it's still safe, it's still nutritious, and I guarantee you if you eat a lot of it, you're going to feel pretty good no matter what. So there's that.
That's fabulous. And I feel like when we make it so dogmatic and complicated and expensive, my fear is not that there's anything wrong with it. If you can afford it, for heaven's sakes, pay gold bars for your beef. I don't care, right? It's fine. Don't ever go to a McDonald's. Don't ever go to a grocery store. Get all of your meat straight from your next door neighbor's cow. That's wonderful.
Right.
But my fear in it is that there are people who cannot afford to eat that way. People who don't feel like they have time to constantly be cooking, grilling, going to a local cow. And I want to make it so like people know you can still have amazing benefits in a really easy, affordable way if that's what you need.
Yeah, I want beef to be accessible to everyone. And so right now we're seeing a really push from the affluent with lots of disposable income that want to take some of these very niche production methods and apply it to the entire industry. And all that does is make beef more expensive. So when I see politicians proposing things like sin taxes on beef or things, regulations on farmers that make it more expensive for us to have cattle, that scares me because it takes a nutrient dense product like beef away from people who are on a budget or have less income to spend on groceries. And so it all is kind of tied together and it really matters. And so that's something I definitely pay a lot of attention to.
Well, it certainly matters a lot to me and my community too. Like that's our food source, you know, that it's a big deal. And when you say nutrient dense, I've heard you talk about this before, how you compare like ounce per ounce, our food, beef, our passion, to other plant-based protein sources, because you know a lot of people right now are going a little crazy for the plant-based protein. But talk to me about that.
Yeah. So, you know, you can look at it in a couple different ways. First, I talk about nutrient-dense beef so much because when we're looking at climate change and like, oh, it's the cow farts that are destroying the planet, it stops because it doesn't measure what the end game is. So not only do we get nutrient dense beef, but we get more than 100 byproducts as well. The makeup we're wearing, the shoes we wear, even stearic acid in our tires. Like beef cattle enrich our lives every day in hundreds of ways. So we're not measuring that. But when we look at like the pure, a 25 grams of protein from beef, you can get that done in a 3-ounce serving. It's 170 some calories. To get that same equivalent from peanut butter, and I'll look it up here, I have it written down, you would have to eat 6.5 tablespoons of peanut butter. That's 613 calories. Quinoa, you'd have to eat 3 cups of it to get the 25 grams of protein. Yeah, can you imagine? It's like a bucket of feed I'd go give my cattle, you know? That's 666 calories. Black beans is almost 2 cups, and that's 379 calories, and edamame, 1 1/3 cups of green edamame for 249 calories. And beef provides the absorbable non-heme iron. So everything that you're taking in, you can soak it in better, absorb it by the body better, and your body has to work a lot harder for the plant-based options. And so you get the best bang for your buck with just a 3-ounce serving of beef. It's really simple, you know?
And 3 ounces, if you haven't looked at a steak lately, people, 3 ounces is very tiny.
Right.
I mean, compared to 3 cups of something that, you know, doesn't taste like steak. I think that is fantastic information to know as far as like how much your body is actually able to use this tiny amount of food. And a cow, you know, provides a lot of ounces. It's not like we're getting a small amount from one cow.
Right.
It's a lot.
Yes.
You were just reminding me of something about the upcycling of what a cow can actually do for us.
Yeah. So, you know, cattle really fit in this whole like ecosystem of how we can grow food to feed, 9 billion people. And so when we have cattle on the range, first of all, we can't digest grass. So they're able to convert things like grass. My cattle will graze on corn stalks after harvest, and things like beet pulp and cottonseed hulls. Byproducts from peanuts, or in Idaho, potato skins. And they eat all this stuff that would otherwise end up in a landfill, and then they convert it to beef, which is like the ultimate superfood. And so again, when we take cattle off the range, or, in this ideal where we think we don't need cattle around, then all of this rangeland that's outside my window all of a sudden goes to waste. And all of these byproducts from crop production can now no longer be used to create beef. And so I think it all kind of works together in concert, and it's something we're seeing people move away from instead of really embrace, what that beef cow can do.
Yes, cows, they are so amazing. Sometimes people will act like I'm sure you get this too, and myself, like, how could you do this to the cows? Don't you love cows? I'm like, you have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
We love cows. Like,
right.
They're amazing. I have insane amounts of respect for the cows. I live and grew up here in a place where we have cattle, lots of cattle around here too, and dairy farmers, and I see them, and my kids and we usually give a shout out the window to them. I love them. They're like a celebrity spotting around here.
I love it.
They do such good things for our bodies. I mean, you know this, and I've alluded to it before. Like you, I was having fertility issues. I was sickly. I had boils, inflammation. I was sick, and I was trying to eat grains because that's what I had been told, and they were low in fat, which I thought was healthy. And meanwhile, I was just getting sicker and sicker. So for folks who think, oh, you just have no respect for these animals, no, I really do respect them, but I also respect my own health. My health did a total turnaround when I started just eating beef. And even though I do respect these animals greatly, I also respect human life. And we deserve amazing nutrition, you know?
I totally agree. So yeah, I'm a Christian, so I value humanity and what we can do for the world. And, I respect animals, and that's a question I get a lot. How can you raise a cow knowing you're going to eat the cow? And it's something that I grew up with because I saw it firsthand. I see new life right now being born on our ranch, and I see death. We see calves that maybe don't make it, or ultimately, we feed them out, and when they get good and fat, we know it's time for them to go to slaughter. And yeah, that's kind of a tough pill to swallow. But I think back to like Laura Ingalls Wilder days, or the pioneers. They would hunt the buffalo, our equivalent to the cow, and they would utilize that animal from nose to tail, and they respected it. And like Laura Ingalls Wilder would salt the meat, and they would eat it all winter long, and it would sustain her family. And they respected that harvest because they knew what that animal was doing for them. And now to eat, we just have to go to the grocery store and swipe our debit card. And it's not like we're hunters anymore. So it's kind of a tough reality. We feel like, oh, if I only go vegan or vegetarian, I won't be killing any animals, and it makes you feel better. And I know you've tackled this recently, and I commend you for it. But yeah, it's almost like we need to bring society back to nature and show them, what we're doing, so that their only exposure to animals isn't just their pets or, what we see on Disney movies.
Disney, right.
Yeah, right.
In order for us to eat, all food requires, honestly, there's no food being created right now where something didn't have to die.
Correct.
I mean, either the insects being sprayed, the critters, the little small furry animals that are getting killed in combines, farm equipment. Yeah. This is part of being alive, is that you have to eat another organism.
Right. I mean, and then you see like celebrities like Joaquin Phoenix in the Oscars saying we should end speciesism. Well, however you say that. But it's like, and he says we're equal to a scallop. And no, sir, respectfully, I disagree. but also, yes, there's no diet that doesn't have animal suffering in it. That's just the harsh reality of nature. And you can go out to the pasture right now here, and I could see a hawk hunting a rabbit, or, a fox or a coyote hunting a smaller rodent. And it's happening every day, whether we like it or not. It's the reality of survival. And thankfully, as humans, we can utilize animals the best way we can and experience great health benefits because of it.
Yes. And instead of, hundreds or thousands of little animals dying for a crop, this one beautiful animal can feed someone, like a single person, sustain them in good health for a full year.
Right.
Off of this one beautiful animal. I think it's amazing. I just think that's the coolest. All right, I'm going to look at my list of things I wanted to ask you. You mentioned the word antibiotics. This is another thing I see come up. People are like, oh no, the meat has antibiotics. And I'm like, I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Okay, so I'm a mom, If my kids are sick, they're going to go to the doctor and they're going to get medicine because I don't want my kids to die of something that could be treated. The same way as how we treat our cattle. So we have herd health plans that we follow as guided by our veterinarian. That veterinarian will tell us, which vaccinations we need to use throughout their lives, and it's all timed perfectly. And then if a calf gets sick, whether it's in a natural market or not, if a calf is sick, a responsible rancher will pull that calf, will give them an FDA approved antibiotic, and then there's withdrawal times. So that animal could never enter the food supply until that withdrawal period has passed. And so this is all just to keep our food supply really safe. We document every shot we're given. And of course, if someone's raising organic or natural, that animal wouldn't qualify anymore. So they would have to be, separated and go into the conventional market. But again, it's one of those things where, we're going to treat a sick animal. But I also eat the beef that I give antibiotics to, that cattle throughout its life. And I'm still standing here today. I don't know. That's probably a simplistic way of putting it. But if I didn't feel good about it myself, I wouldn't eat it and give it to my kids either.
Yes. And I feel like you're right. When one of my children needs an antibiotic, I'm not just throwing it at them all the time. But if one of them needs it, I love my children, so I take care of them. These are your babies. This is your livelihood. This is your product, right? When someone acts like ranchers are out doing irresponsible things, that doesn't even make sense.
No, and economic wise, it's expensive. It doesn't benefit anybody to, not use antibiotics judiciously or responsibly, but we're also not going to neglect the animals. And if they do get sick, and, we look for things, even in the feedlots, feedlots are demonized so often, but in the feedlot, they have, they're called pen riders, and they're on horses every day in the feedlots, just riding around looking for ears down or sniffly noses or droopy eyes. And they treat those animals right away because a sick animal doesn't produce, it doesn't grow, and it doesn't provide us with beef. And so it's really important, to keep an eye on that and make sure our animals are healthy.
What are those people called on the horses?
Pen riders. So they're in the pen.
I need some of those here in the elementary school to just go around and be like, oh no, let me feel you. Yep,
you shouldn't be here today. It's time for you to go home. Quarantine.
Yeah, that needs to be a thing.
Right?
What else do we need to know about our beef?
Let's talk hormones. That's the big one.
Oh my gosh, I hear this a lot too. Oh, the hormones.
Someone just said to me the other day, I don't support the estrogenic feedlot industry, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So, the misnomer that in the beef industry, so sometimes in a feedlot, they'll be given an implant in their ear, which is basically a growth promotant, helps them gain a little bit more in the finishing phase and increase feed efficiency. And the industry as a whole is kind of moving away from that, but that is part of the practice in a little bit. So people will say, well, then they're pumped full of estrogen and hormones so that they grow. But I think it's important to note, so a serving of beef that's been from a steer that was implanted with a growth promotant has about 3 nanograms of estrogen. And I think I sent you a graph, so maybe you can plug it in at this point. But a non-implanted steer is about 2 nanograms. And if we compare this to soybeans, let me make sure I got it right. 342 million nanograms of estrogen, like mind-boggling. Tofu, 51 million. A pregnant woman only has 19 million nanograms of estrogen flowing through her body while she's making human life. So when we talk about the estrogen in beef, it's like minute, and it's not even a discussion. And yet I had a professor in college that told me I won't let my daughter eat meat or dairy anymore because I'm worried about the hormones and her early onset in puberty. That's something we hear all the time. And it's like, well, hey, wait a minute. If we look at non-animal products, your salad has a lot more estrogen in it than a serving of beef. The term soy boy is like a real thing.
Yeah.
Just saying.
But I did not know that part that you just said. I don't think I've heard you say that before. And I think that's huge.
Yeah.
That's really hard to argue with for people who are concerned about estrogen. And somebody has said it to me before. I mean, I'm feeding my daughters lots of beef, and it sounds alarming when people put it that way.
Yeah.
But I also have a kid that's, my oldest is a third grader, and I see a lot of third graders that have already started their cycles that have larger chests than I do. I mean, true story. There are third graders that are very mature. I've got a third grader that's been living off of a lot of beef. She's not a zero carber, but very meat based. She really still looks very much like a little girl. She just is super average. Yeah, it's not like my child has blossomed at age 4 or something.
Well, like in cattle, we talk about there's more early maturing ones than others, and it could be diet related or it could just be genetics, you know, but
I'm sure genetics play a huge part in it. But I think the assumption is if you eat a lot of beef, that your hormones are going to be really out of whack. I mean, my blood work, I've lived off of almost nothing but beef for 10 years now. And my blood work is all really, really textbook normal. It's not showing crazy amounts of anything.
Right. You would either have a beard or totally like, you'd have something, you know, after how much if what the media is saying is true. But yeah, if you look at the numbers, it's not the animal proteins, the meat, dairy, and eggs. It is the grains and vegetables and plant-based substitutes like the tofu and the soy and like it's, but you would never hear that. So.
No. And it honestly, all of the plant-based fake meats, I don't think it's catching on nearly as much as media would like us to believe.
Right.
I hope not, because it's scary when you look at what's really, it's a chemical mess compared to just the beautiful, pure product of a cow.
Right. And so as a cattle rancher, I'm never going to apologize for saying, yeah, I think I have a superior product to this plant-based wannabe substitute. That's, you know, it's its own thing. It's a trendy new thing. Everyone wants to try it, but let's not pretend it's equal substitute to what beef really is.
Right. I'm with you. I am team beef 100%.
You're going to have like so many job offers from my people soon. You're going to be like on the speaking circuit. You won't have time to teach music anymore. You're just going to be like on the Cowgirl Express now. Here.
The Cowgirl Express. I like that, Amanda. I like that a lot. I do love my job, but I could get on a Cowgirl Express. Listen, I've got a whole list of other things that I wish I could talk to you about. The struggles and stigmas of current day ranchers. The myths, like the pink slime myth from a while back, that was such a mess. But for right now, this list is going to have to wait.
Yeah.
I always try to keep them short. I respect your time, and I think people want to show up and get some information. I hope the takeaway from this is today, I'm going to go home and I'm going to eat the meat that makes me feel good, the meat that I can afford, the meat that, and I don't need to feel guilty about taking this one beautiful life. I don't need to feel guilty for not spending more on more expensive meats.
Right.
As long as I'm feeling great and I can afford it, I'm going to just feel happy about it, right?
And one thing I didn't mention too on all these different production methods is it's more of a flavor thing. So if you really like the taste of grass-fed beef, it's more like woody, grassy, more like a wild, like a deer maybe that you would eat, maybe a little leaner. But if you like grain-fed beef, you're going to have that sweeter marbling. It's got a more robust flavor. It just depends on what you like. And if you really want to blow people's minds, you know, all across the country, they're not only eating different diets, but we have different cattle breeds. So I raise Limousine. It's a much different type of beef than like an Angus or a Hereford. And so if people genuinely have questions about their beef, they can certainly talk to a local producer, ask all the questions they want, and buy a whole cow and put it in their freezer, and they'll know exactly what it is. But at the same time, if they want to go to the grocery store and buy a single serving to feed their family that night, they should not have any fears about doing that. And so there's something for everybody, but I see that anxiety in the zero carb community about it has to be absolutely perfect or I'm not doing it right. And so here's your permission from a cattle rancher to eat whatever beef you can find and enjoy it.
You're welcome, world. Here it
Yeah,
is.
right? Let's do it.
So I love running in the same circles as you. I don't know if I will definitely have all of the links to how people can find you, your Beef Magazine articles, and amandaradke.com. You're amazing. I love being your sister in beef, your sister in Christ, and just your sister friend. And I'll see you on the internet. And please come back and talk sometime.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime.
All right. Bye. Thank you.